High in the Indian Himalayas, at over 16,000 feet above sea level, lies a small lake hidden among barren rock and snow. This lake is called Roopkund, though the world knows it by a more haunting name, Skeleton Lake. For most of the year, Roopkund lies frozen, a mirror of ice reflecting the sky and jagged peaks. But in summer, when the sun warms the crags and the snows recede, the lake thaws. Clear mountain light reveals dark water, and beneath that water, a glimpse of pale bones strewn across the lake bed. Welcome to Obscure Chronicle. Here, we gather not just to recount facts, but to wander quietly where mystery lingers. If you find yourself drawn to the silent and the strange, to the histories that resist explanation, we invite you to like, subscribe, and share your questions or reflections in the comments below. Every thought and wonder helps us keep the fire burning through the long night. We stand on Roopkund's silent shore, our breaths thin in the high-altitude air. No birds call here, no trees whisper, only an eerie hush and the sigh of wind along the slopes. As the last ice vanishes, the surface of the lake becomes a looking glass into an ancient tragedy. Emerging from the melting snow, human skeletons lie tangled in disarray. Skulls, ribs, and leg bones rest half submerged in the shallow water or scattered along gravel banks. Some cluster together as if huddled in their final moments. Others lie apart, solitary, cradled by grey stones. Hundreds of people died here, their remains preserved by the cold and thin air. Yet there are no villages in this inhospitable place, no battlefields or trade routes. What brought so many souls to this lonely cirque beneath the gaze of towering peaks? The mountains keep their secrets. We peer down at a skull staring blindly up from the lake bottom, and a chill ripples through us, as if the lake itself were watching. Questions swirl with the rising mist. Who were they? Men and women, even children, are said to be among them. When did they perish? And how? The world below has offered stories to fill the silence, legends passed down for generations. One tale speaks of a proud king who led his entourage into these sacred mountains, dancing and reveling, heedless of a goddess's warning. Offended by this trespass, the goddess unleashed her wrath. A sudden storm of giant hailstones, hard as iron, smashed the revelers where they stood, ending their journey at Roopkund. Another legend claims these skeletons were devout pilgrims on a Nanda Devi journey, who wandered into harm's way or incurred a curse by disrespecting the sacred land. Some say they were sacrificed in an ancient rite. Others whisper of an army lost in a long-ago blizzard, or a caravan that strayed and perished here. In the thin air of Roopkund, such rumours swirl like mountain mists, never settling into any clear answer. It was only in the 1940s that the outside world discovered this macabre place, when a forest ranger stumbled upon the Lake of Skeletons. At first, many dismissed the reports as just another folk tale. Yet here it lies before us, undeniably real, piles of human remains in an alpine basin, out of place and out of time. Decades have passed since then, yet Skeleton Lake remains an enigma. Investigators have studied the bones, but the mystery is still unsolved. Tonight we do not chase those answers. We linger in the unknowing, in the eerie silence of this place where life stopped suddenly and time preserved its testimony. We listen to the wind, to the faint creak of ice, to our own hearts beating in the vast quiet. Dusk falls, and the outlines of bones blur beneath rippling black water. The air grows colder, clouds roll in to cloak the peaks. A sense of reverence washes over us. We stand on ground that is both tomb and temple, an open graveyard at the roof of the world. The dead here have rested for centuries, their secrets slumbering under ice and snow. One cannot help but feel like an intruder in the realm of ancient tragedy and mountain gods. Each bone lies where time left it, part of a tableau of death awaiting a storyteller. Yet the story of Skeleton Lake does not give itself up easily. We have only questions echoing into thin air. As night approaches and mist creeps through the basin, it is easy to imagine ghostly forms moving in the haze. Perhaps the spirits of Roopkund wander here still, searching for peace or answers of their own. In the howling wind we almost hear their whispers, their laments and warnings carried on the air. Our journey has just begun, and already we're humbled by how little we know. Looking into the still, starlit waters of Skeleton Lake, we feel not horror, but solemn curiosity. These bones, white and mute, ask something of us. They invite us to remember, to wonder about the lives that ended here, to reflect on life's fragility beneath these peaks. But they do not give up their truth. The mystery remains, suspended between the living and the dead, between fact and folklore. We leave this first encounter with more questions than answers. As we step back from the lake's edge, the clouds swallow the last pale shapes of bone. Darkness overtakes Roopkund, and the lake becomes once again a still, unremarkable pool, betraying nothing of the hundreds of souls it holds. The mystery deepens with the night. In the chapters to come, we will search for whatever fragments of truth we can find, following every whisper Skeleton Lake offers. For now, we depart this hollow in the heights, carrying the weight of its silence. The ancient puzzle sleeps beneath the snow, waiting for someone to unravel its secret. Perhaps one day its secret will be solved, or else remain a legend. Either way, we will remember this silent Himalayan lake and the untold story written in bone beneath its surface. We set out at dawn, when the valley is still blue with night's lingering shadow and the air holds a hush. Our boots press into soil soft with fallen pine needles and last night's dew. At our backs the last mountain hamlet still slumbers. Before us, the ancient forest stands like a gateway into another world. We carry only whispers as we pass the first trees, speaking in murmurs as if entering a sacred hall. The path is a worn ribbon of earth that twists between gnarled roots and moss-covered stones, guiding us forward into the dim green twilight under the canopy. Deeper into the woods, towering oaks and rhododendrons close surround us. Their branches are draped in old man's beard, lichen and ferns, and their trunks are thick and grooved with age. Sunlight scarcely penetrates here, only stray spears of morning light cutting through the mist that clings to the undergrowth. The air smells of damp leaves and rich earth. Our footsteps fall in a steady crunch of twigs and damp soil, the sound swallowed quickly by the forest. Now and then, a bird calls out, a single clear note echoing through the stillness. Then all is quiet again. In this hushed solitude, we become aware of our own breathing and the quickening of our pulses from the climb. Each breath comes a little shorter than the last as the path leads us gradually upward. After some hours of steady walking, we notice subtle signs that this path has been walked for generations. In a small clearing where the forest thins, we come upon a weathered stone shrine nestled beside the trail. A blackened trident of Shiva is planted in a cairn of rocks, and several tiny bells hang from low branches, chiming gently with each stir of breeze. Faded red and yellow cloth ribbons flutter there as prayers in the wind. An offering of fresh marigold petals lies on the stone, vivid orange against the grey, still moist with dew. Someone has been here before us, perhaps only this morning, pausing to seek blessing before venturing higher. We bow our heads instinctively in this silent sanctuary under the trees. The smell of burnt ghee and incense lingers in the cold air, a reminder of countless pilgrims who have paused at this very spot. The shrine's presence makes the forest feel alive with memory. We imagine them passing through over the centuries, monks, herders, wandering seekers, and pilgrims on their journey to the lake beyond. Their whispers seem to ride on the breeze, just at the edge of hearing. Not long after we leave the shrine behind, a lone traveller emerges from the shadows ahead, coming down the path toward us. He's an older man wrapped in a fraying woolen shawl, carrying a wooden staff. Strings of prayer beads hang around his neck, and a small bronze bell dangles from his pack, jingling softly as he walks. We step aside on the narrow trail and exchange a silent nod as he passes. In his eyes is a distant, knowing calm. It's the look of someone who has touched the high mysteries of these mountains. We watch quietly as he descends into the forest gloom, his figure soon swallowed by the trees below. For a long moment after he's gone, the bell's faint echo lingers in the air, as if the mountain itself is remembering him. At last the tree line breaks. We emerge from the hushed woods into a vast open expanse of grass and sky. The sudden sunlight is dazzling after the forest gloom. We lift our hands to shield our eyes as they adjust to the brilliance. Spread out before us is a high alpine meadow, a bugyal as the locals call it, rolling green hills sprinkled with tiny wildflowers in yellow, white and blue. The ground underfoot is springy with grass instead of leaf litter now. Here, nothing taller than a knee-high shrub grows. The giants of oak and pine are far below us. The air is thinner and cooler, carrying the clean scent of grass warmed by the sun. We pause here to catch our breath and to marvel at the landscape unfolding around us. In the distance, snow-clad peaks crown the horizon. The most prominent is Tresul, a massif of 3 white summits spearing the sky. The mountain is named for Lord Shiva's trident, and it dominates the vista with an awe-inspiring presence. We stand in silence, gazing at its gleaming heights that seem close enough to touch the heavens. In this bright, high country, even our whispers feel unnecessary. The meadow is quiet save for the faint sigh of the wind through the grass. As we walk across the open expanse, a sense of vulnerability mingles with exhilaration. There are no trees here to hide us from the immense dome of sky. Clouds cast roaming shadows on the slopes, and far off we notice a line of small shapes moving. A herd of sheep grazing under the watch of a distant shepherd. The soft tinkling of their bells reaches us sporadically, almost lost in the breadth of space. Aside from them, we are alone up here. In a hollow of the meadow lies a still pond reflecting the sky, a mirror to the heavens. Beside it stands a simple stone shrine, adorned with a few fluttering flags and tridents planted in the earth. Generations of travellers have halted here to rest and offer prayers at this sacred oasis in the heights. We set down our packs for a while, kneeling by the clear pond to sip the cold, mineral-tasting water. It soothes our dry throats and gives us strength for the climb yet to come. Around us, the alpine grass bows under a sudden gust, as if in reverence, and we feel very small and humbled under the vault of the Himalayan sky. By the time evening approaches, we've made camp on a grassy ledge partway up the next steep incline. The sun sinks behind a ridge, and the temperature drops sharply in the thin air. We pull on our wool layers and huddle around a small crackling fire of scrub wood and dry dung that we found. its orange glow a tiny beacon in the vast grey wilderness. Above us, the sky ignites in a fiery sunset, hues of crimson and gold bleeding into purple, and then darkness falls quickly. The mountains become looming silhouettes against a spray of stars. In the clear night air, the stars are astonishingly bright. The Milky Way arches overhead like a luminous river. We sit in quiet camaraderie under this celestial dome, hands curled around tin cups of hot tea, each of us lost in our own thoughts. There is a soft-spoken reverence in our circle. Here, on the lonely mountainside, we feel closer to the heavens than to the world we left behind. In the darkness, stories come to mind unbidden. We recall a legend the locals told about these peaks, a cautionary tale of pride and penance. They say that long ago a great king once attempted to lead a grand pilgrimage to a holy sanctuary beyond the lake, accompanied by many dancers and musicians. The journey was meant to be a celebration, but the gods were angered by such revelry on sacred ground. High in these reaches, a sudden fierce storm overtook the travellers. Some speak of giant hailstones sent down by the wrath of the goddess, of dancers turned to stone on the heights. We murmur this tale in the darkness, each word carried off by the chill breeze as soon as it is spoken. The story leaves us uneasy and humbled. We find ourselves unconsciously glancing at the shadows beyond the fire's glow, imagining shapes in the darkness. When the fire has burned low to embers, we retreat into our tents. Sleep comes fitfully at this altitude. The silence outside is absolute, broken only by the occasional sigh of wind skimming over the ridges. In the dead of night, one of us startles awake, certain we heard something, a distant echo of voices, a faint ring of a bell or the beat of a drum carried on the wind. We hold our breath and listen intently. There is nothing now but our own heartbeat in our ears. Lying there under layers of blankets, we begin to wonder if the mountain keeps memories of its own. In the thin, haunted air, imagination and reality blend. As our eyes grow heavy again, we almost see them, shadowy figures from long ago, making their way up this same path. For a moment, at the edge of a dream, it is as if we walk alongside those pilgrims of old, hearing their whispered prayers and the soft crunch of their footsteps in the dark. The sensation is fleeting but profound. Soon, sleep finally pulls us under, and the night deepens, silent and watchful over our small camp. Before dawn, we break camp and begin the final ascent. In the pale pre-dawn light, our breaths plume as faint white clouds in the frigid air. We move slowly, each step deliberate on the steep gravel slope. At this extreme altitude, our legs feel leaden, and every dozen paces we pause, panting, to calm our racing hearts. The world has shrunk to the circle of light from our headlamps and the crunch of ice and stone underfoot. As the first glow of sunrise peeks over distant peaks, we switch off our lamps. The sky grows lighter, revealing a barren slope of scree and scattered boulders around us. Frost from the night sparkles on the rocks. There are no shrubs here, no grass, only lichen-clad stones and lingering patches of old snow. Even the sound of the wind seems muted. A lone raven cuts across the sky above, its dark shape silent against the dawn. At last, after hours of climbing, we scramble over the final rise and crest a ridge. At nearly 5,000 meters above sea level, Roopkund lies cradled in a rocky hollow below the surrounding peaks. The lake is smaller than we imagined, more a pond tucked into the lap of the mountains, but in the morning half-light it commands our full attention. Encircled by sheer cliffs and snow-dusted crags, the lake's still waters spread out before us, dull and grey like a polished metal mirror. A thin film of ice hugs the lake's edges where the sunlight has yet to reach. Everything is profoundly silent here. We stand at the rim of the hollow, not daring to step closer just yet. Our earlier excitement fades into something else, a quiet, somber awe. The atmosphere is eerie, almost supernatural. The air is perfectly still, as if even the wind respects this place and has ceased to stir. We speak no words. There is a sense that speech here would be an intrusion. In our chests, our hearts thud from the exertion, but also from an unspoken anticipation. We feel that we have arrived at a forbidden sanctuary, the inner heart of the mountain's secret. The lake holds a glassy calm, revealing nothing of what lies beneath its surface. High above, the peaks of Trysil glitter in the new daylight, standing guard over this silent basin. We step forward gingerly onto the rocky shore, each footfall unnervingly loud against the silence. There is an uncanny sensation that we're not alone, that the stillness itself is watching us. At the edge of Roopkund's cold, dark water, we finally come to a stop. This is the end of the mountain path. Here, surrounded by silent stone and sky, we linger on the threshold of a mystery, feeling the weight of the unknown pressing in all around us. The journey has brought us to this hushed, sacred place, and for now, the lake keeps its secrets close, beneath the windless sky and the watchful mountains. We arrive at last in a high Himalayan hollow, a place of otherworldly stillness. Roopkund Lake lies before us, small and unassuming, crouched in a bowl of barren rock and lingering ice. At over 5,000 meters above sea level, the air is thin and crisp. Snow-clad peaks, Trishul and Nandagunti, loom on the horizon like silent sentinels, their white slopes catching the first pale light of dawn. All around, the ground is strewn with stones left by ancient glaciers, a desolate amphitheatre of grey boulders and patches of old snow. In this mystery lake, everything is mute. No bird calls, no rustling of trees, for no tree can grow here. Only the occasional whisper of wind over the ridges. We stand at the water's edge in reverent silence, feeling as though we've stepped into a forgotten realm where even our own breath is an intrusion. For most of the year, this lake is locked in ice, a mirror of the sky turned to frosted glass. Now, at the cusp of seasonal thaw, the ice is receding. The surface lies half frozen and half dark, an oval of black water fringed by a collar of snow. Wisps of cold mist cling to the edges of the lake, curling and coiling as the first rays of sun struggle to break through a bank of cloud. The water is eerily still, reflecting a distorted image of the grey dawn sky. We feel as if the lake itself is holding its breath, awaiting some unveiling. There is a strange weight in the atmosphere, a pregnant pause before revelation. In this fragile calm, time stretches thin. We are not sure what we expect to find, only that the place feels expectant, as if it has a story to tell us. We step gingerly along the stony shore, our boots crunching on remnants of last winter's ice. Each step seems amplified in the quiet. Each step carries us deeper into communion with the lake. Nothing stirs. Far above, a lonely gust skims the ridge, setting loose a few pebbles that skitter down the slope. The clatter of stones echoes briefly, then fades. The silence returns, heavier than before, as if chastising the disturbance. We pause, listening. Our own pulse thrums in our ears. Aside from that, we hear nothing but the soft drip-drip of melting snow and the gentle lap of water against rock. It is the kind of quiet that feels alive, full of eyes unseen. In the stillness, a subtle dread coils in our stomachs unbidden, though we cannot yet name why. The sun climbs higher, feeble but persistent, and the lake yields further to its warmth. At first, it happens slowly. A wet rock emerges here, a sliver of black water there. But then something pale catches our eye at the water's edge. We squint, stepping closer. Half embedded in slushy snow is an object, dull white and curved. For a foolish moment, we take it for a smooth stone or maybe a chunk of ice. Then the light shifts, an empty eye socket stare back at us. A human skull rests on the lakeshore, its hollow gaze fixed skyward. Time seems to stop. A shock like cold electricity runs through us. Suddenly the silence is not peaceful anymore. It is the silence of the grave. We exchange glances, hearts pounding in our chests. No words are spoken, none can be. Slowly, almost against our will, we begin to notice more. What we mistook for sticks protruding from melting snow are bones, long and spindly, some still threaded with desiccated sinew. A rib cage lies splayed in shallow water, gently rocking with the icy ripple. Beneath the clearing ice, shapes resolve into a tangle of skeletal remains, hundreds of human skeletons strewn around and beneath the lake's surface. Skull after skull, bone after bone, they materialize as the snow dissolves, a macabre assemblage revealed by the thaw. It is as if the lake has been keeping a terrible secret, and now, with the changing season, it can hide it no longer. Our mouths go dry. We step back instinctively, almost stumbling on a femur sticking out of the mud. The hush deepens. Even the wind holds its tongue. Nothing in our lives has prepared us for a sight like this. Sunlight glints on wet bones, making them gleam against dark gravel. A skull perched on a rock seems to grin in a deathly rictus. In places, tatters of faded cloth cling to limb bones, fluttering slightly in the faint breeze. One skeleton still wears a leather slipper on a fleshless foot. Another has an arm bent oddly behind its head, as if in its final moments it tried to shield itself from something. The tableau is both gruesome and heartbreaking. Dozens upon dozens of men and women laid low in this desolate place, anonymous and abandoned. We feel an unshakable sense of being watched. It's as though the empty eye sockets all around have fixed upon us, silently observing the intruders. The hairs on the back of our necks rise. Are we truly alone here? The rational mind says yes. These people have been dead for centuries, their spirits long gone, and yet standing among their scattered remains, one cannot help but feel a presence. Perhaps it is just the weight of history, or our own guilt at trespass. But it feels like more, a sensation of unseen eyes in the grey morning mist, of someone, or something, hovering just out of sight, watching. We find ourselves whispering, as if raised voices might awaken the souls that sleep in these bones. Moments pass, or is it hours? We can't tell. Gradually we regain our wits enough to move again. With great care we crouch beside one cluster of remains. Bones lie in disarray. A shattered skull crowned with tufts of brittle hair, a pair of arm bones crossed as if in gentle repose, vertebrae scattered like prayer beads torn from a string. The ground beneath is soft with meltwater. Gently we brush slushy snow from a piece of curved wood, an old walking stick perhaps, and next to it, something metallic gleams. It's the head of an iron spear, rusted and half buried. Nearby, a piece of weathered leather, maybe a shoe or bag, peeks from the thawing mud. Each object, each bone, whispers of lives once lived, lives that ended here in violence or despair. The mind reels. Who were these unfortunate souls? How did they come to be here, entombed in ice at the roof of the world? Long before us, others stood in this very spot and asked the same questions. We try to imagine what it was like then, to be the first witness to such a scene. Perhaps it was a local herder, climbing beyond familiar pastures in search of a lost sheep. He might have been leading his flock through the high alpine meadow when he strayed into this stony basin by accident. Tired from the climb, he approaches a little lake to rest and drink, only to find the water already occupied by the dead. In our mind's eye, we see him, a weather-beaten man humming a low tune to calm his nerves as he walks. His woolen shawl is wrapped tight against the chill wind. Rounding a bend, he notices strange shapes at the lake's edge. Curious, he steps closer. Suddenly he stops short. His song dies on his lips. There, half in ice and half out, lies a human figure, skin bleached and drawn taut, eyes gone, teeth grinning from a hollowed face. All around, the shore is littered with bones glinting in the sun. The herder's heart slams in his chest. He calls out, thinking perhaps it's a recent tragedy, looking for survivors or answers. Only the echo of his own shout returns from the encircling cliffs. What horror must have filled that lone soul on the mountain, confronted with a valley of skeletons. In our vision, we see him back away slowly at first, then turning and bolting down the slope, breath coming in panicked gasps at the sight seared into his memory. Did he think he had stumbled onto a demon's lair, a cursed ground? Perhaps he made the sign of protection, muttering prayers to his gods with every frantic step. One thing is certain, he would have told others of what he saw. His words, likely broken and trembling, would carry this dark wonder into the villages below. In another imagining, maybe it was a wandering pilgrim or a mendicant monk who first saw the bones. A traveller on an ancient yatra, diverted from the sacred trail and lost in the mists. We picture an old sadhu with ash on his skin and faith in his heart, venturing higher than he should. The clouds part and he finds himself at the brink of the lake. He peers into the clear water, seeing not his reflection but a face gazing back from beneath, a skull just visible under the surface. Around it, dozens more shapes loom in the depths. He might have believed he was having a vision, a test from the divine. Did he kneel and offer a prayer for the dead? Or did even a holy man feel the icy touch of fear run through his veins? Whoever the first witness was, herder, pilgrim, or hapless wanderer, the discovery would have been nothing short of nightmarish. Imagine standing here without any context, without knowing that this place would one day be called Skeleton Lake. The term didn't exist yet. It had to be coined after someone saw this sight. That someone, trembling, would return to civilization with a tale nearly impossible to believe. Perhaps at first few believed him. A lake full of skeletons high in the mountains? It sounds like the start of a ghost story, but the mountains do not lie, and neither do bones. We do not know the name of that first discoverer. His story has dissolved into the mists of time. No written record marks the moment. All we have are the whispers passed down through generations, and those whispers suggest that the secret of Roopkund did not remain hidden forever. The mountain folk came to know of the Lake of Bones, and their fear and awe of this place grew with each retelling. In the villages far below, by the flicker of hearth fires, people began to speak of the skeleton lake in hushed voices. Herders swapping tales over warm millet beer would shudder as one recounted how he glimpsed a heap of human remains where no living soul should be. Travellers along the pilgrimage route would share warnings. There is a cursed lake up there, full of ghosts. As more brave or foolhardy souls ventured up to see if the rumours were true, the stories crystallized into local legend. And in these mountains, legends take on lives of their own. One tale rises above the rest. woven into the very culture of the region. In these parts, it is said that goddess Nanda Devi watches over the high peaks. She is revered, but also feared, for her anger can be as devastating as the storms that lash the slopes. According to folk songs still sung in the foothill villages, many ages ago a great king, Raja Jastaval of Kanauj, and his entourage undertook a pilgrimage to honour the goddess. The king was accompanied by his pregnant queen, Balampa, and a lavish retinue of servants, porters, and even dancing girls, or so the song goes. They were unwise, this royal company. They celebrated and revelled on the trail, violating the ascetic sanctity of the journey with music and luxury. Nanda Devi, the mountain goddess herself, was outraged by this display of arrogance on her holy ground. As the legend tells it, her fury was swift and terrible. First came omens. The skies darkened unnaturally. The very earth is said to have groaned. High on a ridge above Roopkund, known ominously as the Jumragali or Path of Death, the pilgrims realized too late that they had strayed into the realm of divinity with disrespect in their hearts. Then the goddess unleashed her wrath. A blizzard of hailstones as hard as iron and large as summer fruits descended upon the hapless party. Peals of thunder echoed off the cliffs like the laughter of an enraged deity. Panicked screams were drowned by the howl of a sudden wind. Horses and porters tumbled off the narrow trail. Dancers and nobles alike were pelted by hail that struck them down in waves. Under the assault, the living had nowhere to flee. One by one, every last member of the king's proud procession fell to the mountain's unforgiving embrace. When the tempest cleared, nothing remained but silence and death. The legend says the goddess's rage swept them all into the lake, flinging their bodies into this hollow as a permanent testament to her power. Their skeletons, so say the villagers, lie here to this day as a warning. Whoever gazes upon the scattered bones is meant to remember the price of hubris, the price of offending the gods. In the local folk tales, Roopkund is no longer just a lake. It is a graveyard of divine retribution. We stand here now, recalling the lines of one such folk song we heard in a village below. The old shopkeeper had sung it under his breath when we mentioned where we were heading. Though we didn't understand the ancient dialect fully, the mournful tune and a few translated words told of cursed stones and the goddess's hail. Listening to it then gave us chills. Standing among the very bones now, we feel the truth in the poetry. Fact or myth, it hardly matters. In this land, myth and reality entwine as tightly as the roots of a centuries-old oak. The folk stories might be an attempt to explain the inexplicable sight of hundreds of dead high up in the mountains. But as we gaze at the evidence before us, skulls cracked as if by some colossal force from above, we can't help but feel a resonance between legend and landscape. Local folklore, echoing through the ages, even has a name for this event. Some call it the Dance of the Dead. They say on certain nights, when the moon is full and the ice is thin, you can hear faint music on the wind, as if the long-dead dancers of the king still continue their final performance. Others claim the spirits of the royal retinue roam these slopes, eternally seeking forgiveness from Nanda Devi. Standing here, it's easy to believe such tales. The place feels haunted, not in the cliché sense of ghosts rattling chains, but with a profound spiritual weight, a sense that every rock and drop of water remembers what happened. We find ourselves silently apologizing to the air, as if to placate any listening presence. We mean no disrespect. We're only here to witness and honor the dead. It's possible, of course, that the truth of how these people died is more ordinary. Hypothermia, an epidemic, perhaps an accident. But no one in these mountains ever tells ordinary stories. Instead, the lore passed down is rich and grim, aimed to teach and to warn. Parents might hush unruly children by reminding them of the fate of the prideful king at Roopkund. Pilgrims embarking on the Nanda Devi Raj Jat, the sacred procession that winds near here every 12 years, take a moment to offer prayers at a shrine along the way, lest they too anger the goddess whose home they traverse. Even trekkers and porters, hardened mountaineers though they are, share a certain wary respect when they speak of Roopkund. It is as if everyone who comes here feels that this is a place unlike any other, a place where the veil between the living and the dead is perilously thin. The day wears on, but up here time is deceptive. The sun arcs above the peaks, periodically hidden by swift-moving clouds that cast racing shadows over the lake. One moment, bright light illuminates every skull and femur in stark clarity. The next, a chill gloom returns, throwing the cirque back into twilight even at noon. In these shifts of light, we almost imagine the skeletons stirring, an illusion of the moving clouds. Now and then a gust of wind skirls around the bowl, sending a handful of pebbles clattering or whipping a tattered piece of cloth on a rib bone so that it flaps like a ghostly pennant. Each time our hearts jump, but nothing truly moves. The dead keep their own counsel. We decide to sit for a while on a flat stone above the shoreline to simply be present in this place. We are careful where we step. One cannot help but feel one is walking through a graveyard, and it would be wrong to tread heedlessly. From this slight elevation, the full scene unfolds. The lake's dark water encircled by a ring of bleached bones. Beyond, the jagged walls of the cirque rise like an arena, encasing us with the departed. Thin ribbons of old snow cling to the crevices on the slopes, stubbornly resisting the summer's advance. The only sounds are the occasional creak of ice and the drip of meltwater trickling down to the lake, a slow, mournful dripping, like a leaky faucet in an empty house. Drip, drip. Each drop concentric ripples in the water, momentarily distorting the reflections of mountains and sky, as if even the lake cannot look upon its contents steadily. It strikes us that we are witnesses to a ritual of nature. Every year, when the sun grows strong enough, the ice gives up the dead it has claimed. For a brief window of time, perhaps only a month or so, the skeletons lie exposed in plain sight, bathed in daylight and starlight alike. Then, come autumn's first storms, snow will again blanket this valley. The lake will freeze over once more, and the bones will sink back into obscurity beneath a white shroud. It is a cycle of revelation and concealment, an eternal unveiling and reveiling of the past. We just happen to be here during the unveiling, bearing witness as the mountain shares this grim secret with the sky. A profound hush has fallen over us, as heavy as the stones around. We speak only in murmurs now, if at all. There is a strange peace mingled with the horror. The initial shock has eased into a deep, sorrowful respect. These skeletal remains, after all, are not merely objects of mystery. They were human beings. Each skull was a person with dreams and fears. Each set of bones once walked and danced and felt the warmth of the sun. Now they lie here anonymously, without tomb or marker, yet this lake has become their memorial. In a way, the entire landscape is their tombstone. The silence itself is an epitaph. As we sit, we cannot escape the feeling that we're not alone. It's not a threatening feeling now, but rather a companionship across time. The dead are here, and we the living share this space with them. In the gentle lapping of the water, we fancy we hear a distant echo of voices. Or is it the wind? A brief eddy swirls on the lake's surface, and for a heartbeat it sounds like a sigh. We hold our breath, listening. The sound fades. Only the mountain breeze remains, teasing the fine hair by our ears. We exhale, not realizing we'd been holding our breath. How many breaths have been snatched away here, we wonder? How many final exhalations hang suspended in this thin air, never to reach home? Twilight approaches. The fog that had retreated in midday now gathers again, flowing down from the ridges in gauzy ribbons. The outlines of the bones grow softer in the dimming light, half merged with the rocks and ice. The lake's water, dark all day, turns an inky black, reflecting nothing now. We feel the temperature drop rapidly, a reminder that night comes swiftly and harshly in these heights, and with night will come the freeze once more. Already a fragile skin of new ice is forming on the quiet water near the edges, trying to reclaim what the day revealed. Before darkness fully claims the lake, we rise and perform a small gesture of homage. We pile a few loose stones gently into a cairn, a humble marker on the shore, and whisper a prayer or a thought, each of us in our own way, for the departed. The gesture feels inadequate, but it is heartfelt. None of the dead here have names that we know, none have families to light candles for them. Perhaps in leaving this little pile of stones we tell them that they are not entirely forgotten, that the living remember and mourn, even without knowing who they were. As we prepare to leave, we cast one last long look over Roopkund Lake. The bones lie quietly in fading twilight, keepers of their enigma. A thin mist has crept onto the water's surface, and through it the skulls seem to float, suspended in the cloud. It is easy to picture them as spirits now, rising from the lake to wander the encircling crags until dawn. We pull our jackets tighter and begin to walk away, retracing our steps up the ridge in silence. Behind us, the lake and its silent host vanish slowly into the fog. The only thing we carry out is the weight of what we have seen. In the gathering dark, as the first stars prick the sky above the peaks, one thought echoes in our minds. Some mysteries are meant to humble us. Roopkund's secret is not fully ours to claim or to solve. Not tonight, maybe not ever. It belongs to the mountains, to the gods, and to the dead. We came seeking answers, and instead we found a profound question carved in bone and ice. It is a question that fills us with dread and awe in equal measure, and as we depart, leaving the lake to its eternal vigil, we feel the gaze of unseen watchers at our backs until we are safely down the trail. Only then does the tightness in our chest ease, as if the mountains exhale and release us from their spell. The legend will live on. The mystery will endure. In the valley below, they will ask us what we saw, and we will struggle to find words. Perhaps we will only shake our heads and murmur of fog and wind and dark water, of a silence that was like a presence. Perhaps that is enough. This story of Skeleton Lake will continue to unfurl in whispers and songs, passed from old to young, growing with each telling. And somewhere up there, under the indifferent stars, the bones will rest in their frozen sleep, keeping their secrets until the sun coaxes them forth again. In this way, the Unveiling repeats, year after year, a haunting reminder that the earth does not easily relinquish the memories of those who have walked upon it. Night falls early in the high Himalayas. In the villages beneath the sacred peaks, we gather around crackling pinewood fires while icy winds prowl outside. The elder's voice is low and steady, weaving old tales with the smoke that curls toward the dim rafters. In these hushed moments after dusk, when shadows of the past seem to mingle with the present, we listen, We listen to stories carried on the wind, stories of a hidden lake of bones, of curses and gods, of pilgrimage and penance. They call that distant hollow Roopkund, but in our lore it has other names: Mystery Lake, Skeleton Lake, or simply the Cursed Lake whispered with a shiver. For generations such stories have been passed from parent to child, elder to youth, not written in books but living in breath and memory. The wind outside keens through the deodar trees, almost like it too is voicing the old legends. We huddle closer to the warmth. The firelight flickers across weathered faces as an old grandmother begins a familiar tale. Her eyes reflect the flames as she sings more than speaks, intoning an ancient melody without words at first, a keening tune that everyone here knows in their bones. "This is the song of the lake," she finally whispers, and we lean in. In that moment the world narrows to the circle of firelight, the taste of wood smoke on the tongue, and the vivid pictures her words conjure from the darkness. In our stories, Roopkund is not merely a place but a presence. The lake lies in a desolate cradle of the mountains high above human hamlets, and the villagers say it is guarded by unseen eyes. Few dare venture near except on sacred duty. Around winter hearths, parents warn their children never to disturb the lake or take anything from its shores, lest a curse fall upon them. There are whispers of those who once carried a skull or bone away as a cruel souvenir, only to be haunted by misfortune until the relic was returned. The very stones around Roopkund, some say, remember what happened there. When fierce storms roll in, hurling ice and sleet against the ridges, many believe it is the lake unleashing its sorrow again, reminding the world of a long-ago tragedy. The stories describe nights at Roopkund when no living soul is there, nights when the spirits of the lake roam free. We imagine pale figures in the mist, the restless souls of the dead singing laments that echo off the cliffs. Elders insist that if you listen carefully, especially during the season of pilgrimage, you can hear ghostly voices mingling with the moan of the wind. In those voices are sorrow, warning, and sometimes anger. The lake is cursed, they say, because something sacred was broken there. Some transgression against the divine left a stain on that hollow, and the curse lingers like the mist that never truly leaves the icy waters. Of all the tales carried on the Himalayan winds, one story is told again and again, a tale of pride, divine wrath, and a procession of death. In hushed tones, as the fire burns low, the storyteller recounts the legend of Raja Justaval and the goddess of these mountains. Long ago, they say, there was a king, a Raja from a faraway lowland kingdom, some name Kanauj, though the place lies far from these peaks, who undertook a journey into the high domain of Nanda Devi, the revered mountain goddess. The king was accompanied by his queen, who was heavy with child and a grand entourage, porters, guards, dancers, and even musicians. They climbed the steep paths toward the high alpine meadows to celebrate or supplicate the goddess at her holy shrine. It was to be a pilgrimage of honor, but somewhere along the way the king's heart swelled with arrogance and folly. Around our fire the storyteller's voice trembles as it paints the scene. The king's party, unmindful of the sanctity of those heights, made camp near Roopkund. Despite the thin air and sacred silence, they lit fires, they danced and revelled. Some versions even say the pregnant queen longed to bathe in the crystal lake, or that the king had ordered a lavish celebration in defiance of the forbidding surroundings. Such indulgence in the realm of the gods was a grave mistake. The guardian spirit of the mountain, Whether one names her Nanda Devi, the bliss-giving goddess, or her fierce protector Latu, took offence at this display of hubris. What happened next is etched in the folk memory with stark clarity. Without warning, the sky darkened in daytime. Angry clouds swallowed the mountain sun, and a bitter wind howled through the valleys. The villagers' tales say the goddess sent a terrible storm as her messenger. Not a gentle rain, but a rain of ice, a barrage of colossal hailstones, hard as iron, as the old song goes. The pellets of ice pelted the king's retinue mercilessly, each hailstone striking like the hammer of a god. Panicked screams were drowned by the roar of the storm. Horses bolted, tents were shredded, men and women ran in every direction, but there was no escape. Beneath the fury of Nanda Devi's tempest, one by one, the king's proud party fell. The queen, the dancers with their ankle bells, the soldiers brave but mortal. All of them were struck down, their skulls split by the goddess's icy wrath. We hear a sharp crack from our hearth fire, and it seems to echo that fateful crack of skulls beneath hailstones centuries ago. The storyteller's voice softens to a lament as she describes how, when the storm cleared and silence returned, nothing stirred by the lake except the wind. The once proud travellers lay strewn about Roopkund's rocky basin, lifeless and slowly being covered by falling snow. The goddess had exacted her divine retribution for their sacrilege. Roopkund became a lake of the dead. As she concludes this tale, the storyteller may murmur a prayer to Nanda Devi, and all of us around the fire feel a chill unrelated to the mountain air. The story of Raja Jastaval's doomed pilgrimage is more than a cautionary tale. It is almost a piece of living religion here. Through it, we are taught humility and reverence. No one is greater than the mountains, an elder might say, and no heart is more wrathful than a goddess scorned. The lesson hangs in the smoky air. Treat these heights and their divine presences with utmost respect, lest we invite the same fate. When the pilgrimage reaches the vicinity of Roopkund, often the weather itself turns, as if in recognition. Clouds gather and the temperature drops. It's said that at this spot prayers are offered and bells rung for the souls lost to the goddess's wrath. Some pilgrims whisper apologies on behalf of the ancient king, offering flowers or a pinch of holy ash to the lake's still waters. A few brave souls might approach the lake's edge to bow and leave an offering, a piece of cloth, a bead, or simply a tear for those who died. But none would dare take anything from this place. The stories have seen to that. Instead, the tradition is to give, to soothe the spirits, and to seek the goddess's mercy. In one ritual known among the villagers, women fashion small boats of bamboo during the festival season. In each tiny boat they place a clay lamp and a few grains of rice, lighting the lamp and setting it afloat on a stream that flows toward Roopkund. Each flickering light is a prayer for peace, for the departed souls and for the safe passage of any who venture near the lake. Such rituals tie the present to the past, binding us to our ancestors and to the mysteries of the lake. Long after the fire has died to glowing coals and the children have fallen asleep, the stories linger. We step outside into the cold night. Overhead the sky is moonless, and the stars spill across the darkness in a silent clamour. The wind has gentled to a whisper that winds through the pine boughs. In that whisper, the stories live on. We can almost hear the distant strains of the pilgrim song, or the faint echo of a scream swallowed by the storm ages ago. The mountains guard their secrets, but through folklore and faith, the people who live in their shadow have given those secrets voice. In these high villages, to tell a story is to offer a prayer. Every tale of Roopkund's curse or Nanda Devi's anger is a way to show respect to the powers that reign here, and to remind ourselves of our place in the grand, humbling scheme of nature and spirit. We speak softly of these things because they feel true in a way beyond fact. By dawn, the winds will carry our words up the valleys toward the peaks, perhaps all the way to that lake of bones cradled in ice, and perhaps in turn the wind will return with new stories, or the same old story told slightly differently, keeping it alive. The Chronicle of Roopkund is written not on parchment, but in the hearts of the mountain folk and in the very wind that combs the ridges. Each generation adds a verse or a detail, but the core remains. A sacred lake, a dire warning, a communion between mortals and the divine. In the end, as we bank the fire and wrap ourselves in blankets against the chill, we know this much. Come tomorrow night or years hence, we will gather again. We will listen once more to the stories in the wind and pass them on, reverently, in whispers, beneath the eternal gaze of the Himalayan heights. Daylight in the mountains is a quiet and patient thing. Each morning the peaks glimmer and the lake below returns, ancient as ever, holding its silent court beneath the drifting clouds. But change comes, even here. It comes with new boots on the old paths, with strange accents echoing down the ridges, and with the sharp, restless eyes of those who have travelled far for answers. We look back now to another century, a time when the world was being drawn and quartered onto maps, when the chill of Himalayan air was no longer a barrier to the ambitions of empire. For years, the stories of Roopkund had travelled down the valleys in murmurs, crossing from village to village, growing and changing with each retelling. And then, one day, the rumours reached ears that did not belong to mountain folk. They found their way to the British, the administrators and officers of the Raj, whose curiosity was as keen as their taste for tea. It began, perhaps, as all legends do, with a whisper. There was talk among the hill porters and local guides of a lake of skeletons, far up in the remote ridges of Garhwal, a place the villagers shunned, but which the British heard with a kind of hungry intrigue. For what was a forbidden lake to them, if not an opportunity, a puzzle not yet named, a mystery unsolved by science or scripture? The mountains were full of tales, but bones were evidence. They were the sort of riddle that could be catalogued, measured, fitted into the order of empire. They came first as explorers, clad in wool and khaki, accompanied by strings of coolies and guides. Their journals, crisp and unsmudged, soon filled with notes, elevations, temperatures, lists of supplies, observations of flora and fauna. Some arrived by accident, seeking new passes, tracing the old pilgrim routes, others by design, drawn by the growing rumours of a charnel lake. One such arrival is still spoken of. In the early years of the 20th century, it is said, a British forest ranger climbing in search of new timber resources stumbled upon Roopkund. His was not the first foreign foot to set down near the lake, but he was among the first to write of it, and to write with the certainty of a man who believes every inch of the world should be known and named. What must he have felt standing at the rim, the thin air burning in his lungs? Did he see at once the scatter of bones, the sun glinting on ancient skulls? Or did he first see only the lake, dark, still, holding its secrets, before the thaw revealed what lay beneath? We imagine him squinting into the early light, jotting notes, tugging at his moustache, struggling to fit what he saw into the tidy boxes of English sense. His journal would record the facts, bones numerous, human, evidently, remains of flesh still clinging to some. lake half frozen, no sign of habitation nearby. Local porters refuse to approach, regard place as haunted or cursed. The rangers and officers who followed in his stead brought other tools, sketchbooks, compasses, even early cameras. The bones were counted, measured, skulls collected and boxed, a census of the dead conducted beneath indifferent peaks. Victorian minds, sharpened by years of cataloguing the world, began to ask their own questions. Were these the victims of a forgotten battle? The remains of a lost caravan, a vanished tribe, a plague camp? The lake itself became a specimen, a curiosity to be shipped off to Calcutta or London, a thing to be solved. And yet, even with all their measuring and mapping, the newcomers found themselves unsettled. The cold, the silence, the way the clouds slid across the sky, veiling and unveiling the bones in a rhythm older than empire, it all worked against certainty. At night, camped by the water, listening to the wind whistle between stones, some swore they heard footsteps circling their tents. Others wrote of uneasy dreams, of faces glimpsed in the flickering lamplight that were not their own. They took samples and stories back to the lowlands. Reports were filed. Rumours spread through colonial clubs. An alpine mystery, a veritable Golgotha, as one Englishman called it, recalling the biblical Hill of Skulls. But the further from the mountains the tale travelled, the more it was bent to the will of rational minds. Each theory grew grander. A doomed regiment of lost sepoys, a Himalayan Pompeii, a relic of some ancient unknown people. And yet in the end, the cold facts refused to arrange themselves into any tidy explanation. The bones remained, season after season, the lake's own quiet resistance to the certainty of science. The locals, watching from a distance, shook their heads at the outsiders. They do not understand, a shepherd might have said. They are deaf to what the mountain says. Years turned. Empires shifted. By the 1940s, with the world torn by war, the lake drew new attention. A fresh party of forest rangers, this time Indian and British both, arrived during a summer of strange melt. They found the bones as before, piled higher than memory, some with flesh still clinging in the cold. Rumour swept through the valleys that Japanese soldiers, missing from Burma, had been found at last. For a moment, the lake was a matter of empire's security, a story not of ghosts, but of spies and war. Yet the remains, weathered, old, wrapped in tatters that spoke of another age, offered no evidence for such fears. Instead, the lake continued as it always had. It kept its secrets. Outsiders came, took their measurements, and left. The wind erased their footprints. The water grew thick with ice, and the bones, anonymous and unnumbered, waited for another thaw, another visitor, another round of questions. What did the British really find at Roopkund? A mystery they could not name, a story too wild for the city clubs and libraries. For all their curiosity, they left the lake as they found it, strange, silent, and unresolved. The locals say the mountain allowed them only a glimpse, a small taste of the unknown, before shrouding itself once more in mist and myth. And so, Roopkund stands, between legend and ledger, between folklore and field report, a place that refuses to be pinned down. The empire receded, but the bones remain, patient and silent, outlasting every theory. In the shadow of empire, the mountain held fast to its story, offering just enough to remind even the most rational mind that not everything must be solved, and some things are best left to the wind. Night on the high slopes comes down quickly. smothering the thin blue dusk in sudden blackness. For the colonial surveyor or the forest ranger at their makeshift camp by Roopkund, the darkness brought a different kind of awe, one less familiar than the lamps and parlours of the lowlands. There was no safety in numbers, no comfort in the old certainties of map and measure, only the crackle of a campfire, the snap of a chill wind, and the whisper of the mountain all around. We imagine these visitors, huddled over their journals by candlelight, the pages trembling slightly in the breeze. Their entries are precise, weather, coordinates, the count of bones along the shore, but the margins are filled with unease. In this vast silence, even men of science felt the weight of something older than logic. They wrote of the strange quiet, the way sounds seemed to vanish into the rocks. Some confessed to an unsettling sense that they were being watched, not by animals, but by something in the land itself. The rational mind resisted such feelings, yet at night, under the sweep of so many cold stars, even the most skeptical hearts found themselves reaching for explanation. They did not sleep easily. The wind, rising and falling across the water, sounded sometimes like voices. The flapping of a torn tent, the faint clink of metal, could send a shiver through the most stoic bones. One officer, whose name is lost but whose words remain, wrote that he dreamed of footsteps crunching over snow, coming ever closer, yet never seen. Another spoke of waking to find his lamp guttered, his boots frosted with a rime that had not been there at midnight. In the thin air, imagination and reality became hard to tell apart. Morning brought a return to routine. They rose early, faces raw from the wind, and resumed their measurements. Bones were prodded, mapped, counted, described in chilly prose. They sent word back to district headquarters. Unexplained mass mortality. No obvious violence. Articles found include wooden staffs, leather slippers, beads, local guides unwilling to approach. Each report tried to pin the lake to a cause, to a history that would fit within the Empire's archive. Yet, for all the notes, the mystery thickened. How old were these bones? What great calamity, storm, plague, battle, had brought so many to ruin on this cold plateau? Theories were exchanged like currency among the British and Indian officers. A lost caravan overtaken by blizzard, a group of ascetic yogis caught in an avalanche, the remnants of a forgotten war. Each explanation found its doubters. Each answer raised new questions. As the colonial teams worked, the locals watched from a respectful distance. Mountain porters and shepherds rarely lingered at the lakeside. When asked, they would shake their heads or make a gesture of protection, muttering that the place was not for the living. Some refused to spend a night at Roopkund at all, insisting the dead were best left to their rest. A few would assist for a day but slip away before dusk, carrying with them their own stories, their own reverence for the unseen. For the British, this was a source of both frustration and fascination. Why would they not help gather the bones or search for relics or share what they knew? They failed to grasp, perhaps, that the villagers' silence was itself a form of wisdom. To the locals, the foreign urge to possess, to own, to dissect, was itself a kind of blindness. The mountain had its ways. Some knowledge was not for human hands to hold. In this strange meeting of worldviews, myth and measurement, reverence and curiosity, the lake remained unchanged. The bones did not offer up their names. No record in Calcutta or London could make the chill in the air less real, nor the shadows on the water less haunting. Still, the British tried. More teams came, more photographs were taken. The bones, once secret, became a minor sensation. Reports circulated in the Indian press and in the journals of the Himalayan Club. Some saw in Roopkund an opportunity, a story to be told at dinner parties, a puzzle to bring fame to a clever mind. But others, after a night on the mountain, left with a quiet reluctance, unwilling to return, unable to explain the unease that followed them down the trail. So the story grew, half science, half ghost tale. Local legends mingled with foreign speculation. Each new theory, a lost army, a cursed pilgrimage, a disaster written only in snow and silence, became a thread in the tapestry of the lake. And always the bones remained. Decades passed. The empire began to fade, replaced by new flags and new priorities. Yet Roopkund, high above the politics of the world, endured as it always had. The lake continued its silent cycles. Ice, thaw, unveiling, concealment. The mountain was indifferent to the feet that came and went, to the names written and forgotten, to the shifting tides of power. Even now, when we read the old reports or trace their faded maps, we sense the humility that overtook many of those early outsiders. The further they travelled into the heart of the mountains, the more their certainty unravelled. Here, at the world's edge, even the most rational minds found themselves speaking in softer tones, walking with gentler steps, and leaving with more questions than they brought. Roopkund remains, a riddle half swallowed by cloud, a story that outlived its would-be chroniclers. The Empire's curiosity, for all its energy, could never quite possess what the mountain had chosen to keep for itself. And so, the lake waits, season after season. The bones rest where they have always rested, unclaimed and unclaimed by history. Above, the sky shifts from dawn to dusk, and the wind carries away the last faint echo of foreign voices, leaving only the hush, the chill, and the silence that belongs to the mountain alone. Morning at Roopkund, sometime in the Age of Empire. The sun rises thin and hesitant, chasing a cold mist across the bouldered hollow. The lake, half awake, shivers beneath its film of melting ice. We find ourselves at the edge of history's long guessing game, caught between the certainty of numbers and the pull of legend, between the new science and the older fear. The British and the Indian officers who followed them came with pencils and boxes, calipers and ledgers. They were trained to catalogue and to count, to measure every anomaly, every mystery with cool precision. For them, Roopkund was a problem to be solved, a riddle written in bone and stone. Their first question, how many? How many lives ended here and when? Their porters counted skulls. Some wrote dozens, others hundreds. The numbers changed with every thaw, every shifting drift of snow. The bones seemed to multiply as the light changed, as if the mountain itself conspired to confound the census. Second, who were they? In this, the theories multiplied faster than the evidence. Some believed these were the remnants of a defeated army, lost to a forgotten campaign. Others wondered if they were travellers, merchants or herders, caught by storm or avalanche, abandoned by their companions. The more they searched, the more contradictory the evidence seemed. Skulls both large and small, men and women, the old and the young, all commingled in a single calamity. In their reports, the officers used the language of empire. Aboriginal tribes, they wrote, or lost race. Sometimes they speculated about plagues, thinking of smallpox or cholera, epidemics that had swept through the hills before, leaving only sorrow behind. They examined the bones for marks. Some seemed cracked, others bore signs of weathering. A few looked as though they'd been bludgeoned. Each detail sparked a fresh theory. Still others, less convinced by tales of disease or disaster, wrote of ritual and sacrifice. Some recalled the stories they'd heard in the villages, of pilgrimages gone awry, of gods angered by human pride. They speculated that this was a site of ancient penance, a place where a whole community had come to meet its fate beneath the gaze of the peaks. The presence of wooden staffs, beads, and bits of jewellery found among the bones only deepened their wonder. What sort of people travelled so high, and why did so many fail to return? There were those who wondered if these were Tibetans or perhaps Nepalese, swept in by the winds of some forgotten migration. Others looked to the ancient routes of trade and war, sketching lines on their maps and trying to fit Roopkund into the great mosaic of Himalayan passage. With every theory, the atmosphere in the camp shifted. By day, the investigators strode among the bones, notebooks in hand, speaking in clipped analytical tones. But at night, when the cold crept in and the wind rattled their tents, the air changed. The officers spoke more quietly, and sometimes not at all. The locals' warnings echoed in the silence. Do not disturb the dead. Do not speak their names. Some men claimed to dream of the storm, of voices lost in snow, of a darkness that pressed against the thin canvas walls. Victorian anxieties coloured everything. The lake was a challenge, but it was also a mirror. It reflected the fear of the unknown, the anxiety of empire stretched thin at the world's edge, the realization that not every riddle could be solved by daylight or by reason. There was comfort in a good theory, but there was also comfort in retreat. Some reports trailed off, the writers admitting in their final pages that the bones refuse explanation. Some suggested that it was better not to pry too deeply, that perhaps Roopkund's secret was meant to endure. And so the lake remained a puzzle. The first theories, bold, contradictory, incomplete, settled over Roopkund like another layer of snow. Every visitor brought their own questions, their own answers. The bones waited. The wind shifted. The mountain kept its silence, letting the cycle repeat. As the century turned and new voices entered the conversation, Roopkund would see its mystery change shape yet again. But for now, in the age of first theories, the air was thick with wonder and with doubt, a hush suspended between the chill of reason and the warmth of story. By late afternoon, the camp was a hive of cautious activity. Journals and canvas bags, battered satchels and small wooden crates all littered the rocky shore. Officers called out measurements. 12 skulls here, 20 bones by the western edge. Someone scribbled sketches by lamplight, trying to fix the scene in ink before the shadows grew long. Yet the act of cataloguing, of pinning the moment to paper, felt futile. Every time a count was made, another patch of melting snow revealed new bones, new patterns, almost as if the dead were playing some gentle game with the living. Some men moved with the briskness of professionals, poking at femurs, weighing jawbones in their hands, making quiet remarks about age and condition. Others lingered by the lake's rim, distracted, gazing out across the water as if waiting for something to rise from the depths. Even in the bright glare of day, Roopkund radiated a peculiar gravity, a force that seemed to draw the eye away from task and toward the unanswerable. As the sun slanted behind the peaks, shadows fell like a curtain over the camp. Dinners were cooked quickly. Strong tea, biscuits, whatever dried meat or lentils could be managed. The mood at the fires was restless. Some argued over the latest theory. Was it hail, as the legends insisted? Was it sickness, or some enemy the record books forgot? Voices rose and fell, tangling with the gust that swept down from the cirque. When a story did not fit the facts themselves became uncertain. It was often in these evening hours that doubt crept in. An officer, alone with his thoughts, might recall the words of a porter. "This place does not want to be measured. Count all you wish, Sahib. The numbers will change tomorrow." Another, sitting with a cup of cooling tea, would notice the strange hush that returned when conversation ceased. The fire crackled. Beyond its light, the silence was total. Even the wind at times seemed to pause at the lake's edge. Nights grew long. Sometimes the investigators lay awake, listening to the groan of shifting ice, the hollow tap of stones tumbling down the slopes. The moon would rise, bathing the skeletons in pale silver, and it was hard not to imagine the dead stirring, restless beneath their blanket of years. Some men kept diaries, and in these pages the mood shifted. By day they wrote with clarity, "Inspected remains on northern shore." Most skulls intact, some fractured. Clothing remnants suggest highland origin. Further study needed. But the night entries turned more poetic, more uncertain. "The air is very cold. I dreamed of bells, of footsteps along the water. I heard a woman singing, though no one else seemed to notice. Something here refuses to be named." Occasionally a man would confess to being watched, not by his fellows, but by something older, unseen, always just beyond the reach of the lantern's glow. Some awoke at dawn with a start, convinced they'd heard voices, whispers threading through the thin air. As the days wore on, the initial bravado gave way to humility. Each new theory seemed less convincing in the face of so much mystery. The officers began to envy the mountain folk, who accepted Roopkund's secrets as a fact of life. A few even adopted the local custom of leaving a coin or bead on the shore, a small gesture of respect to whatever force kept watch over the lake. The investigators' presence did not go unnoticed by the villagers. Some came up from the valleys to observe, their faces impassive. They listened to the theories, nodded politely but shared little. When pressed, they told the old stories again, of kings and goddesses, of storms and curses. "It is not for us to know," they said, "and not for you either." Some simply shrugged and turned away, content to let the bones sleep in silence. Occasionally a brave local would approach the camp at dusk, bearing a cup of chai or a small offering. In low voices they might share a tale, a grandfather who saw lights above the lake on a festival night, a shepherd who claimed to have spoken to a shadow in the fog. The investigators, for all their skepticism, listened more closely each night. As the expedition drew to a close, the men packed their crates with samples and sketches, their notebooks full of tentative answers and growing doubts. They left the lake behind with respectful unease, burdened by more questions than they brought. Roopkund had not given up its story. It had only deepened the mystery. The first theories settled into legend, filed away in reports and retold in distant drawing rooms. Some men returned home, certain they had seen something sacred, others content with the explanations of chance and weather. All, however, carried away a memory of silence, of bones in the mist, and of a place where history slips quietly out of the grasp of reason. The mountain watched them go. Above the lake, the wind picked up, carrying away their voices, scattering them across the peaks. The bones rested, patient, waiting for another thaw. another season of questions. The cycle would begin again. Morning in the Himalayas. A blue hush lingers on the stones. Somewhere far below, a bell rings in a mountain hamlet, calling children to a day that will pass unnoticed by the world above. Here, at Roopkund, time still moves in its ancient circle. Thaw, reveal, conceal, and sleep. Yet with the new century, new voices echo in the thin air, voices that speak in the languages of science, method, and modern inquiry. We imagine the first true researchers, Indian scientists, young and determined, making the climb not as pilgrims or surveyors, but as seekers after knowledge, their tools packed carefully alongside their rations. They come not to exorcise the ghosts or count the bones, but to listen to what the lake will whisper if it is willing. Their approach is slow and deliberate. They move with reverence, for the mountain is not a laboratory, but a living archive. They kneel on the cold ground, lay out their notebooks, their glass vials, their tweezers and brushes. Each bone is handled with gloves, each artifact logged with trembling patience. The air, even now, feels charged, somewhere between a hospital and a temple, between the hush of memory and the click of a camera shutter. Gone are the mustachioed officers in khaki. Now there are pale lab coats and careful voices. Where once men told stories around a fire, these new visitors debate in whispers over spectral analysis and carbon dating, DNA samples and isotope signatures. The lake, inscrutable, watches the new rituals begin. The first samples are carried away in cotton and paper. A sliver of bone, a lock of hair, a rusted ring or bead. Each item is catalogued and stored, its origin marked on a map. Shore, shallows, slope, or under the silt. In the valley below, the relics pass through customs and checkpoints, then vanish into the white corridors of research institutes. Delhi, Lucknow, Calcutta, London, New York. For a time, the bones of Roopkund become travellers, scattered far from the silence that birthed them. In laboratory light, the scientists examine what the mountain has preserved. The skulls reveal wounds, healed and unhealed. Some show cracks that spiral outward, as if struck by something heavy and round. Teeth are counted, where patterns noted, young, old, male, female, none quite the same. Even the chemical fingerprints in the bones, strontium, carbon, oxygen, begin to whisper faint clues of distant lands, of diets rich or lean, of journeys made long before memory. They analyze fibers, tiny beads of glass or metal, remnants of cloth that crumble at the touch. Some patterns are unfamiliar. Stripes of indigo, faded embroidery, a stitch that matches nothing in any museum. The objects are as silent as the bones, yet each one is a message from the past, folded carefully and left for the patient to find. The scientists argue, compare notes, test and retest. Some come seeking confirmation of legend, others hope to refute it. All in their own way are searching for connection, a thread that will bind the living to the lost. In these rooms, late at night, the mood turns almost spiritual. The researcher at her microscope feels the weight of so many eyes, so many lives compressed into a single bone. She pauses before logging a result, glancing at a photograph pinned above her desk. An image of Roopkund, its dark water rimmed with snow, a solitary skull gleaming in the half-light. It is not just science at work here. There is reverence in the way each sample is handled, each finding double-checked, each doubt carefully written in the margin. The language of statistics and probability runs alongside a hush that feels like prayer. In the field, back at the lake, another team waits for the next thaw. They camp in the cold, listening to the creak of ice and the distant call of a lammergeier wheeling above the cliffs. They map the site with laser and GPS, sketching out the scatter of bones, the patterns left by water and wind. At night, gathered over a flickering camp stove, they share the old stories, the goddess's curse, the king's pride, the dance of the dead. The mountain seems to listen, holding its own counsel, the silence broken only by the pop of ice and the hiss of the burner. With each year, the analysis grows more sophisticated, genomes sequenced, ages calculated, dates determined to the decade or even the year. Yet the puzzle only deepens. The bones are not all the same age, nor from the same origin. Some are older, some younger. Some come from nearby valleys, others from far beyond the horizon, their chemistry hinting at deserts and plains, rivers and forests. Women, men, children. None with names, but each with a story. Each discovery is a light, but the shadows grow deeper. How did so many die together, yet belong to different times and tribes? Were they all caught by a single calamity? Or did the lake call to them over centuries, one group after another, each repeating a forgotten journey? The scientists, for all their learning, admit humility. In their published papers they write of anomalies, of enigmatic mortuary practices, of a ritual landscape yet to be understood. They do not pretend to finality. The more they learn, the more the mystery grows. Some say the mountain is generous with its clues, but stingy with its solutions. Occasionally the descendants of those who live in the shadow of the peaks come to visit the labs to see the relics of their past. They stand in silence, touching a fragment of cloth, a bead, a ring, as if seeking to recognize a family face in the worn lines of bone. Some weep quietly, others offer a prayer, and the scientists watching feel the depth of what they hold. Back at Roopkund, the rituals endure. Every few years a new team arrives with fresh equipment, new questions, the same sense of awe. The bones are measured, scanned, and sometimes reburied. Offerings are left, a garland, a prayer, a whispered promise not to disturb. The locals still watch from the ridges, their faith in the goddess unchanged. The mountain remains as it always has, mysterious, patient, unwilling to give up all its dead. As evening falls, the researchers pack their bags, leaving behind markers and stakes, notes buried in waterproof tins. The sun dips behind Trisul, painting the peaks in gold and shadow. The lake is quiet, bones half hidden in slush, the water black and waiting. We stand together, living and dead, linked by a mystery as old as the stone beneath our feet. The scientists look to the mountain for answers, but Roopkund offers only silence, a deep, abiding silence that is, perhaps, the truest testimony of all. When the ice recedes and the weather opens a brief window, the scientists return to the lake. Each expedition is an act of careful intrusion. There is a ritual to their labour, tents pitched at the same stony perch as those of the first rangers, tea brewed on tiny gas stoves, journals lined up beside digital tablets, old and new coexisting in the thin air. Equipment arrives by mule and by hand, carried over scree and snowfields, boxes labelled fragile, jostling against coils of rope and canvas. We watch as they descend, reverent, like priests at a ruined shrine. Some pause at the shore, removing their hats or murmuring a quiet greeting to whatever presence lingers here. The bones lie where the last thaw arranged them, skulls cupped in gravel, femurs tumbled together in the shallows, beads and bangles threaded through silt. Some scientists kneel and simply look for a while, as if learning a story written in the tilt of a jaw or the curve of a scapula. Surveyors lay out flags, measure distances. Photographers crouch and circle, waiting for the clouds to break. When the light shifts, the lake's secrets appear. The faint impression of cloth pattern, the dent in a skull, a line of tiny vertebrae leading to a foot still encased in shrunken leather. They document everything. The catalogue grows thicker with each visit, and yet the story remains as thin and haunting as the air. Local porters and shepherds sometimes come to watch. They stand at a respectful distance, arms folded, their faces a blend of amusement and wariness. When asked, they will shrug. The mountain gives up what it chooses. They know the stories, have seen the cycles of curiosity and departure. Some offer advice. Do not work after dusk. Do not disturb the cairns. The scientists nod, grateful for any scrap of wisdom. At night, the camp becomes a circle of lamplight. Researchers trade stories, a geneticist from Delhi, a glaciologist from London, an anthropologist who has learned a little of the local dialect. The air smells of paratha, boiled rice, the tang of antiseptic. Some nights, one will share a memory, a skull uncovered in a riverbed in Ladakh, a ritual witnessed in a Nepalese village, the sudden hush that falls when the lake's fog drifts in. Disagreements spark, but always softly. Was it a storm, as the legend says? Was it a series of events, decades or centuries apart? Is there any meaning in the objects? A ring here, a bead there, a scrap of silk woven with patterns no one can yet read. Theories rise and fall with the flickering of the camp stove. Some find comfort in answers, others in the absence of them. Beyond the tents, the mountain listens. A dog barks once, then falls silent. A pair of eyes, a snow partridge perhaps, gleam in the reflected firelight. For a moment, all is still. Someone wonders aloud if the goddess is watching, her wrath waiting for the unwary. By day, they collect more data, soil cores, pollen samples, fragments of textile. LIDAR scans map the cirque in 3 dimensions. GPS marks each bone, each artifact, with precise coordinates. In the cold, breath forms halos in the air as hands grow numb on steel and glass. Even so, there is patience here. The mountain's tempo slows everything down. At the water's edge, a young researcher finds a ring of stones. A cairn, old or new, no one can say. Inside, she discovers a carved wooden staff, worn smooth by time. She hesitates before lifting it, feels the weight of memory in her palm. Is it a relic of devotion, or simply a stick shaped by the weather? For a moment the categories blur, science and story lean into one another, and the air feels thick with watching. When the field season ends, crates and cases descend the mountains. In the cities below they pass from hand to hand, air freight to customs to lab, always accompanied by documents, always stamped and signed. In the laboratory, white coats and gloves return, the hum of centrifuges, the buzz of digital displays, the careful patience of radiocarbon dating. The data arrives in waves. This bone, a woman, late 20s, strong and healthy in life, dead some 12 centuries ago. That one, a man, a traveller from distant lands, his chemistry a map of migration. This skull, fractured just so, that femur, marked with a cut that is not quite explained. The genetic code of Roopkund's dead grows more complex, more global with every test. Some results confound expectation. Two groups, separated by centuries, perhaps even by ancestry. There are hints of ritual and hints of happenstance. Each line of data is a thread, but the tapestry remains unfinished. These scientists stare at charts and wonder, how did so many paths end here, in this silent basin? In every finding there is humility. Reports are careful, language is cautious, evidence suggests. Findings indicate but do not conclude. For every question answered, another two unfold. Why Roopkund? Why the mountain? Why this hollow at the end of the world with nothing but water, wind, and the memory of a storm? The researchers return to the field, again and again, driven less by certainty than by awe. Some come to believe the lake is a threshold, a place where story and evidence meet and refuse to part ways. In their private journals, those not published, but kept quietly in a drawer, they write of moments when they felt the past brush close, when the dead seemed near, when the wind on the ridge sang in a voice that did not belong to science alone. Eventually each team leaves. The tents come down, the path winds back to the world of trees and rivers and human noise. The mountain remains, the lake freezes again. In the quiet, the bones shift, perhaps just a little, moved by meltwater or memory, realigned by the slow pulse of thaw and sleep. The last person on the ridge looks back. The lake is already hidden by mist. Perhaps the mountain has allowed them one more glimpse, a brief opening in the long silence of its keeping. If answers exist, they are folded deep within the mountain's heart, waiting for another season, another seeker, another long, slow unveiling. At first light, the valley is blue and hushed, mountains ringed with cold clouds. Roopkund, silent as a held breath, waits under its ancient sky. The bones remain half hidden in the thaw, the lake dark and glinting, but now the footsteps that reach its shore are different. Not scientists, not colonials. The people who come now bring something else: curiosity and respect, hope and fear, longing and reverence in equal measure. Every few years the old trails are alive with colour. Villagers from distant valleys, mothers and grandfathers, children and shepherds join in the procession of the Nanda Deviraj Jat. For weeks they climb together through forests and meadows, singing the goddess's song, carrying banners, bells and offerings for the mountain's guardian. As they ascend, their voices rise and mingle with the wind, old melodies, half in prayer and half in longing, for safe passage and for remembrance. When they reach the heights, fatigue and altitude sickness slow their steps, but also bring them into another world. The horizon tilts, breaths become short and precious. They pause at shrines, lighting butter lamps and leaving garlands for the goddess. Some speak quietly of Roopkund and the warning it carries. The children, wide-eyed, listen as elders recount the story of the king and the curse, of bones that dance when the moon is full, of the price paid for pride on sacred ground. When finally the path rounds the last stony bend and the lake comes into view, the singing falters. Laughter hushes. Some weep. Others drop to their knees. To see Roopkund is to witness both an ending and a beginning, a doorway between lives lived and lives lost, a mirror to mortality in the thin, bright air. For many, the pilgrimage ends here. Prayers are offered. Grief and gratitude commingle in the cold. Flowers float on the water. The bones are not counted, only honoured, as the procession circles the shore, careful not to disturb a single stone. Between festivals, Roopkund remains mostly alone, but now and then a shepherd appears, his flock grazing in the buggyals below, his eyes sharp as he watches for wolves and strangers alike. He knows the lake's moods, the way mist settles suddenly in the bowl, the crack of ice that sometimes sounds at midnight, the hush that deepens at dusk. Some shepherds will not approach the water, keeping their distance from what they call the Lake of Ghosts. Others come closer, crossing themselves, whispering a blessing, leaving a pebble on a cairn as insurance against bad luck. A few claim to have seen things. Lights moving on the surface, a figure standing by the water at dawn, shapes drifting between snow and cloud. These stories pass quietly in the village tea shops, over cups of sweet chai. Some listeners scoff, others cross themselves, but all agree. Roopkund is not an ordinary place. It asks for respect, and it punishes arrogance. In recent years, new footsteps have come. Young men and women from the cities, Delhi, Bangalore, Kolkata, arrive with packs, cameras, down jackets, and a hunger for adventure. They laugh and pose for photos in the lower meadows, marvel at the rare air, gasp at the sweep of sky. But as the path rises, their voices fall. In the final climb, when the air is so thin it seems the world might snap, something changes. Those who reach Roopkund seldom rush. They fall silent on the rim, peering down at the black water and the drift of white bones. Some are awestruck, others uneasy. Many confess later, over fires in the dark, that they felt watched, as if the mountain itself weighed their intentions. Some offer a silent apology to the dead, placing a thread or a coin on a stone. Others, unnerved, turn back quickly, unwilling to sleep near the shore. For a few, the experience lingers in dreams. They speak of cold winds at their backs, of distant music on the night air, of faces glimpsed in fog. Some become obsessed, returning year after year, unable to let the mystery rest. Others refuse to speak of the lake at all, as if naming it aloud might bring misfortune home. Some scientists still come, but not always with instruments. A handful return in pilgrimage, less as analysts and more as witnesses. They bring not notebooks, but flowers or prayers. They remember the feeling of standing at the threshold, of seeing bones in the morning frost, of feeling the weight of centuries pressing close, of realizing how small the living are beside the dead. For them, Roopkund is not a solved problem, but a living presence. The mountain, they say, changes you. It leaves something in your bones, too. A hush, a question, a humility that does not fade with distance or time. As the seasons turn, word trickles down the valleys. The lake is open. This message is passed with both excitement and trepidation. Some villagers, especially the old ones, watch the sky for signs, the angle of clouds, the taste of the wind, the way animals behave before storms. A few believe that when the bones emerge, dreams grow troubled, and the border between the worlds thins. There are stories of children waking in the night, speaking of pale faces at their window, of dogs who refuse to climb higher, their fur bristling at the unseen. When the thaw is at its height, a few men and women, chosen or simply brave, may ascend to the lake. They go quietly, carrying offerings, a handful of rice, a clay lamp, a sprig of rhododendron. These are left on the stones, not as payment, but as respect. Some linger to sing an old song, its verses half forgotten, but the tune enduring. a gentle thread of memory that floats across the water and disappears into the rocks. Down in the villages there is a subtle shift during these times. At dusk, doorways are swept, a lamp left burning on the windowsill, a little extra smoke wafted to honour ancestors. The children are kept closer, and the elders repeat, sometimes gently, sometimes with an edge. Do not go to the lake. Not now, not unless called. The air itself feels charged, as if waiting for a reply from the mountains. Every 12 years, when the Nanda Deviraj Jat Yatra sets out, the whole region is transformed. For weeks, villages are decorated with garlands and coloured flags. Pilgrims in hundreds and then thousands pass through, singing, chanting and retelling the old stories as they move. Along the trail food is shared, feet are bathed, strangers become kin for a few nights beneath the cold stars. But as the procession nears Roopkund, a hush settles. The most devout carry a woven image of the goddess. Others carry relics, inherited or borrowed, hoping to receive a blessing or forgiveness. When the yatra finally arrives at the lake, the mood is solemn. Offerings are floated on the water, incense burned on flat stones, bells rung in a slow, deliberate rhythm. Some pilgrims circle the lake in silence, others pray for the souls of the dead or for the protection of their own kin. Here, myth becomes ritual, and ritual becomes living memory. The stories of the goddess's wrath, of a king's doomed pride, of a storm that came from nowhere, all these are not just tales, but warnings written into the movement of feet, the weaving of garlands, the order of the songs sung by firelight. For those who witness it, the festival is overwhelming, an intersection of history, faith, and grief. Some leave changed, carrying a sense of peace or a new humility. Others, it is whispered, leave with a burden, a secret they do not share, a shadow that follows them quietly back to the world below. Tourists arrive now too, guided by glossy magazines and promises of mystery. Some come for the trek, some for the views, a few for the legend itself. Guides tell them stories on the way up, of the lost king, the sacred pilgrimage, the curse that lingers on the wind. At the lake they pose for photos, sometimes smiling, sometimes sombre, sometimes not knowing where to look or how to feel. A few, though, are caught by something unexpected. They put away their cameras, walk the rim in silence. They feel the mountain in their lungs, the hush of the lake settling on their shoulders. They kneel, unasked, or leave a stone on the pile by the water. Some write afterward, online or in journals, that they felt something they cannot name, a kind of presence or peace or fear, as if the past pressed close and made itself known. Not all are so touched. Some hurry away, disturbed by the bones, dismissing the hush as superstition or chill. But even the skeptics, it seems, walk a little faster on the way down, casting a glance over their shoulder at the basin below. In all these encounters, pilgrims and porters, shepherds and scientists, elders and children, there is a kind of unwritten dialogue between the living and the lake. The bones do not speak, yet they shape the words said and unsaid, the prayers uttered, the choices made in daily life. The mountain's presence is felt not in grand gestures, but in small rituals. A lamp lit at sunset, a song sung into the wind, a silence held when the lake is mentioned. Some say the dead are at peace here, others that they are restless, forever circling the water in longing or in penance. Perhaps both are true. What is certain is that Roopkund is not just a site or a story, but an ongoing relationship, a meeting place of memory and hope, of humility and awe, of history and the mystery that refuses to die. As the chapter closes, dusk falls once more across the ridges. Smoke curls upward from a distant hearth, a bell sounds on the trail below, and the lake settles under its shroud of night. We too bow our heads and whisper a farewell, not just to the dead, but to all who have shared in this silent, uneasy, and beautiful communion with the mountain's heart. There are places on Earth where the hours run strangely, where the sun moves differently across the sky, and the seasons seem to come and go in their own secret rhythm. Roopkund is such a place, a hollow in the mountains that refuses to yield to ordinary calendars or the logic of clocks. Here, the old and the new, the living and the dead, the remembered and the forgotten, exist side by side in the high, thin air. We wake to a morning that feels like no morning at all. The sky is a faint watercolour of pale blue tinged with rose and gold. Frost rims every stone, glinting for a brief hour before the sun erases it. The silence is not empty, but full of echoes and footfalls, songs sung into the mist, prayers that have no known recipient. In the distance, bells ring on a pilgrim's staff, sounding as they have for centuries, unchanged except for the hand that holds them. The lake lies still, its surface a perfect lens that reflects both the sky above and the bones below. Standing at its rim, it is easy to lose the boundary between reflection and reality, between what is remembered and what is seen. For a moment, the face that stares back at us is both ours and another's, someone lost long ago, someone yet to arrive. This is the work of Roopkund, to draw all times together, to blend memory and possibility into a single, weightless now. Every stone, every ripple on the water is thick with what has come before. We remember the first herder who stumbled upon the bones in a year now lost to record. We remember the king and queen of legend caught by pride and punished by hail. We remember the colonial officers, notebooks trembling in their hands, and the scientists who knelt in awe before the puzzle that refused solution. We remember too the children who hear these stories in winter, curling beneath blankets as the wind moans on the heights. Yet the lake is not only a place of memory, it is also a place of forgetting. Names dissolve here, stories are polished smooth by retelling. The dead, once counted and catalogued, drift back into anonymity. What was once a tragedy becomes a myth, then a warning, then simply a silence that all who come here are forced to acknowledge. There are moments, especially at dawn and dusk, when the world feels thinner at Roopkund, when the air shivers with possibility and the edge between things blurs. Pilgrims speak of hearing voices on the wind, of glimpsing shapes in the fog that are not animal or human, but something older, stranger, untouched by age or decay. Trekkers sometimes wake from uneasy dreams, convinced they have been visited or spoken to, unable to recall what was said. Scientists, even the most rational, admit a strange disorientation here. Watches run slow or fast. Batteries die without warning. Notes go missing, only to turn up days later, smudged and unreadable. Some feel that the mountain itself resists being measured, that the very air conspires to keep its secret. It is as if time loops and folds here, one researcher writes, as if the past is never truly past, and the future can be glimpsed fleetingly in the ripples on the water. In our world of endless answers, Roopkund remains a place of enduring question. Even as new tools map the lake and scan the bones, each discovery seems only to widen the circle of wonder. Why here? Why so many? Why do the bones not speak their names, even when their secrets are sought with such care? Locals shrug and say, "The mountain chooses." Pilgrims bow and whisper a prayer. Outsiders return home, changed by what they have seen but unable to put it into words. The scientists write papers and leave room for uncertainty. All are touched in their own way by the knowledge that Roopkund is not just a site, but a threshold, a place where meaning is always just out of reach. At night, as mist creeps in and the stars bloom cold above the peaks, we feel the strange comfort of that uncertainty. Some mysteries are not meant to be solved. Some stories are meant to echo, fading and returning like footsteps in the fog. There is a pattern here, not marked by clocks or calendars, but by the slow turning of the mountain's own wheel. Each year the snow comes and buries the lake in silence. Each year the thaw returns, and with it the white curve of a skull, the glint of an ancient ring, the tangle of ribs among stones. The villagers say that as long as the world spins, this cycle will endure. They do not know when the first bones appeared, and they do not ask when the last will vanish. For them, Roopkund is outside of time, a place where every ending is also a beginning, and where memory is folded into the living land. At dusk the air cools and the wind stirs. We walk the shore as countless others have done, and in every footstep we feel the weight of those who walked before. It is said that if you listen at sunset you can sometimes hear old music, faint drums, the distant clash of anklet bells, a fragment of song rising and fading on the wind. Some call it imagination. Others say it is the king's retinue, caught forever in their last doomed procession. There are moments too when the water reflects nothing, neither sky nor bone nor watcher, just a flat black stillness, as if the lake has turned its face away. In these instants, we sense that we are not meant to look further, that some mysteries are best left untouched. Roopkund is a guardian as much as a grave. Sleep comes fitfully at this altitude, and the line between dream and waking blurs as the night deepens. Those who rest by the lake speak of visions, endless corridors of ice, faces glimpsed in the corners of memory, a cold hand reaching out, not to harm, but to remind. Sometimes the dead appear in these dreams, not as frightening apparitions, but as silent witnesses, keeping watch over their resting place. In the dark, time loosens its hold. The past breathes beside the present. We recall stories told by the fire, a herder seeing footprints in fresh snow, only to find no one when he follows. A pilgrim awakened by a whisper, a name she'd never heard but could not forget. Some wake with tears on their faces, others with the sense of peace so deep it is almost terrifying. Come morning, the dreams fade, but the feeling lingers. Those who visit Roopkund often return to their lives changed in some subtle way. Some find themselves moving more slowly, noticing the colour of clouds or the scent of cold stone. Others take up new rituals, lighting a lamp at dusk, listening for old songs on the wind, bowing their heads when they speak of the mountains. The villagers say it is wise to offer thanks for what the mountain gives and to accept what it withholds. There are rituals not found in any book, small acts that acknowledge the presence of the unseen, a thread tied around a wrist, a stone placed at the edge of water, a silent moment held at the crest of the trail. Some bring gifts for the goddess, a coin, a flower, a cup of milk poured onto the ground. Not all these offerings are for the dead. Many are for the living, a plea for safe passage, for dreams unmarred, for a memory that will not curdle into fear. On festival nights, the oldest among the villagers lead the youngest to the highest point from which the lake is just visible, a silver eye in the dark. They tell the stories again, voice low and steady, weaving the legend into the next generation. The children are told, gently but firmly, to show respect, to never throw stones, to never speak ill of those who rest beneath the water. The past is not an enemy here, it is a companion, sometimes heavy, sometimes light, but always near. Even in the age of satellites and science, Roopkund defies closure. Each new test, each new scan yields another question, another angle. The villagers accept this as natural. Outsiders are more restless, driven to resolve, to conclude. But the mountain has time enough for both. Its patience is endless, its gaze steady, its secret secure. Perhaps this is the lesson Roopkund offers, that to live in peace with mystery is its own kind of wisdom. The world below moves fast, hungry for certainty. But here on the ridge, beside the silent lake, we learn to dwell in not knowing. We learn to listen for what cannot be said, to wait for what will not arrive, to carry the puzzle lightly as a flower pressed between the pages of a story. The sun slips behind the peaks. The cold seeps up from the stones. We gather our things, bow once more and turn away, not with triumph, but with gratitude. Roopkund keeps its place in the clouds, untouched by our explanations, held aloft by story and silence alike. Roopkund does not end at the water's edge. Its story stretches outward, like ripples from a stone cast into deep water, touching lives and imaginations far beyond the high cirque. Long after the bones vanish beneath new snow, the mountain's secret lingers, not as a solved mystery, but as a question that multiplies, transforms, and circles back year after year. In villages down the slopes, the legend of the lake is not contained to a single story. It threads through lullabies sung to restless children, through the way old men sweep dust from the threshold, through the lines of a prayer painted in red on a lintel. There are no direct answers offered, no final word. Instead, Roopkund is woven into daily life, a reminder of humility, a lesson in patience, a warning to keep one's promises to gods and to kin. The local school children, when asked, draw pictures of the lake, a blue oval under snowy peaks, or sometimes a ring of skulls floating in water. The teachers do not forbid these images. Instead, they tell the story as it was told to them, softly, reverently, neither as horror nor as triumph. For each generation, Roopkund is something new. A ghost story, a puzzle, a shrine, a shadow. No one owns the tale. It changes with each telling, gaining new colours as the years spin by. In distant cities, the lake is a headline, a case study, a flicker of strange news in the endless scroll. Scientists debate in conference halls. Artists sketch images inspired by old photographs. Writers turn the legend into poetry and film. A famous painting in a Delhi gallery shows the bones as white lotus blossoms floating on black water, each one a soul between worlds. A folk musician from Uttarakhand composes a song that blends the old chant with a modern rhythm. The chorus, wordless, echoes the wind on the ridge. For some, Roopkund becomes a metaphor for loss, for memory, for the unsolvable in a world obsessed with answers. College students discuss the ethics of disturbance and conservation. Environmentalists see it as a symbol of fragility, a place balanced between endurance and disappearance. Journalists chase after the newest scientific finding, only to return to the essential, inescapable truth. The lake refuses to close its story. But the deepest echoes are private. Among trekkers and scientists, shepherds and pilgrims, the memory of Roopkund lingers not as information, but as an impression, etched into dreams, colouring quiet moments, shaping the way they walk through the world. Some have spoken of the Roopkund feeling, a hush that falls unexpectedly in busy streets, a chill when passing beneath a mountain shadow, a sudden longing for high places and the hush of old snow. Others describe a recurring dream, climbing a long stony trail, reaching a place where time stands still, and hearing, just before waking, the faint sound of bells or laughter coming from beyond a curtain of mist. Those who have touched the water or pressed their hand to a skull half buried in silt often leave a part of themselves behind. For weeks or years afterward, they find themselves pausing at shrines or leaving small gifts for the forgotten. Some write letters to friends they have lost or speak kindly to strangers. Roopkund changes you, one researcher said, not because it gives you answers, but because it reminds you how vast the unknown truly is. Each year, as the festival of the goddess approaches, new songs are sung on the trails, new stories are told in tea shops and schoolyards, and old ones are revised in the retelling. The villagers light lamps in the windows, the scientists plan new expeditions. Some tourists arrive seeking spectacle, others seeking silence. All are met by the same mountain, the same wind, the same lake, indifferent, waiting, and strangely welcoming. There is no finish line at Roopkund, no moment when the riddle is solved and the book can be closed. Instead, there is an ongoing ritual of remembering, bones thawed and buried, legends told and retold, questions asked and asked again. In this way, the lake survives, not by yielding its secret, but by inviting each visitor to become, for a moment, part of the mystery. In the final reckoning, Roopkund is not a story with an end, but a sound that keeps returning. A bell struck on a cold night, its note stretching across valleys and years. Every listener hears it differently. For some, it is the echo of warning. For others, a call to reverence. For a few, it is simply a reminder that wonder is not a thing to be solved, but to be lived with, patiently, quietly, and with a heart open to the questions that never sleep. As we look back from the pass, watching clouds close over the basin, we carry that echo with us. In the days ahead, it will return in quiet hours, in dreams, in silence, in the hush before the next new story begins. Roopkund waits, and the world listens. Night falls softly on the high places. The wind draws pale ribbons of mist over stone, and Roopkund, Skeleton Lake, settles into the quiet that has been its only constant for centuries. There is no fanfare, no resolution, only the slow return of darkness, and the bones once more disappearing beneath the first hush of new snow. We stand for a final moment on the rim of the lake, gazing down at water so still it seems carved from obsidian. The air is colder now. The last rays of sun withdraw from the peaks, painting the ice and the scattered stones in a brief, impossible gold. In this hour, everything feels closer. Every life that ended here, every question ever asked, every answer that drifted away like mist on the wind. We do not know all their names. We do not know all their stories. Roopkund keeps its secrets. It gives up just enough for awe and humility, and then closes its hand. We have learned to listen for what is not spoken, to honour the silences, to be grateful for the not knowing. Some mysteries are not meant to be solved. Some places are meant to humble, to quiet the mind, to remind us that wonder endures beyond the reach of fact. We remember the pilgrims who climbed these heights, carrying their faith and their stories in every footstep. We remember the villagers who bowed their heads and left offerings on the stones, never asking for reward. We remember the scientists and explorers, their notebooks trembling in the cold, their curiosity sharpened into reverence by what they found here. We remember the festival bells, the songs rising in the thin air, the prayers that drift and linger in the darkness after all voices have faded. Roopkund is more than a story or a case. It is a place where the living and the dead, the ancient and the modern, the told and the untold, coexist for a while in the hush of the mountains. It is a wound and a wonder, a place both feared and loved, an unanswered question held out not in malice, but in patience. It asks us not to solve it, but to witness it, to sit quietly with the uncertainty, and to let that uncertainty change us. Perhaps that is why the story endures, because the world needs spaces that cannot be mapped, rooms in the mind left open, mysteries whose purpose is not to be unravelled, but to be remembered. In the bustle below, in the cities where stories are rushed and filed and forgotten, there is comfort in knowing that somewhere high above, a lake sleeps beneath the peaks, holding its silence. As we prepare to descend, the cold deepens. We turn once more to the black water, watching as the last colours drain from the world. The silence here is profound, but it is not empty. It is full of memory, of presence, of the countless lives that have passed, loved, struggled, and been lost to time. There is grief here, but also grace. We thank the mountain, the lake, the unknown dead. We thank the old songs and the new science, the festival bells and the prayers whispered into the night. We thank the silence, which asks nothing but gives so much. We thank you, the wanderer who walked this story with us, who lingered in the mist, listened to the echoes, and allowed yourself to be changed, if only a little, by the wonder of not knowing. Perhaps that's all Roopkund ever needed. Witnesses willing to pause, to honour, to feel. Perhaps all any mystery wants is to be met with respect, to have its silence shared. And so, we leave this place as we found it, shrouded in cloud, guarded by wind, ringed by stones. The story is not finished. The lake will thaw and freeze again. The bones will surface and sleep, as they always have, and the questions will remain. We walk down the mountain path, the darkness gathering behind. The last thing we hear is the wind, carrying the faintest bell, the oldest song, the hush of a story still being told. Thank you for wandering with us, for seeking wonder, for honouring what cannot be explained. May the silence of Roopkund, Skeleton Lake, bring you peace, and may the questions it leaves linger softly, inviting you always to look, to wonder, and to remember. And so, the lake drifts into the fog again. Its secret is safe for now, at the roof of the world. Before we let go of this journey, if Roopkund's silence has moved you, If its mystery stirred a question or a memory, let us know in the comments what lingers most in your mind. Do you believe some mysteries are better left unsolved, or does the unknown draw you in deeper? If you'd like to wander further with us through history's quiet shadows, please like this video and subscribe to Obscure Chronicle. Every new story, every echo of the past becomes more meaningful when shared with fellow seekers like you. Thank you for listening, for reflecting, and for being part of this search, not just for answers, but for wonder. Until next time, may the mysteries keep you company, softly, in the faint shimmering candlelight.